Welcome back to Sudbury Politics, the show, with your hosts, Jeff McIntyre, Rachel Adrians, and Richard Eberhardt. This is the second in our very special series on Laurentian University. On today's show, we gather with Professor Ruben Roth and student Darius Garneau, working together for extra credit in insolvency studies as they help lead the community response to the restructuring of the university. Thanks for joining us for this very special episode of Sudbury Politics, the show. Welcome back, Sudbury Politics, the show, a very special feature episode regarding what's going on at Laurentian University. Our first section, we had Alex Usher, a consultant on post-secondary education, and listening into that conversation as our next two guests. Very happy to have Ruben Roth with us. Ruben's an associate prof at Laurentian University in the Workplace and Labor Studies program. He's been there for several years, 2005, I think he started. And I see in the bio, Ruben, that back in the 90s, you were a speechwriter at Queen's Park for some time. So us politicos, obviously we share a little bit of love or cynicism for that world. So it's great to have you on the show for the first time.
Thank you.
And Darius Garneau, not a stranger to our show, fourth year computer science and law and justice student at Laurentian University, past president, I think, of the Political Science Association. Darius, yeah, that was last year's bio. You may recognize him if you don't recognize him from Sudbury Politics, the show, as one of many voices behind the Black Lives Matters in Sudbury. I mean, he's doing 2 CBC interviews a day, so we're very lucky to fit him in here. And he's also one of the organizers, both are organizers of a group called Save Our Sudbury, which is organizing a community response around what's happening at Laurentian. Welcome, both of you, to the show. What did you think about what you just heard from our last guest, Alex Usher? Either of you go first.
Okay, I'll take it first. When Alex said that U of T has a $475 million surplus, largely, I think he attributed it largely to the strength of international students. There can only be one U of T, in a sense, right? Or at least in Ontario. This is a behemoth. It's my alma mater. It's where I did my master's and doctorate at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. U of T is a lovely university, a wonderful campus, and it attracts international attention. Granted, Alex mentioned that small universities, Algoma among them, does a fair job of it, and that Laurentian does a terrible job of it. But it just reminds me how small a province we are and how a small northern community-based university like Laurentian University can't be all things to all people. It is a comprehensive university, but it also reminds me of the weakness of the business plan, if you don't mind me using that in the context of universities. What kind of business plan is it that says we're gonna slice your funding down to the bone, 27, 28% coming from the province, essentially a freeze for 10 years, but really anemic funding for 20. I think it was the Ray report, right before 2005, Bob Ray dropped a report that said Ontario universities are underfunded. We need to do some catch up. I came to Laurentian about a year or two after, and I was the recipient of some of that catch up. I got a job out of it, which was wonderful. But Laurentian University is no U of T in so many ways. We serve a small and unique community in terms of culture, language, indigeneity. We a francophone community that's strong. That's about 20% of the population of the city of Sudbury, and we serve the GTA in Southwest Ontario. I know from students in my class that this is where they're from. My students are not exclusively from Northern Ontario or Sudbury. A good number, about a third, sometimes some years a half, of my students are emanate from the South or Southwest or GTA. So just the expectation that the province takes a back seat and allows a university to flounder with hardly a word, is mind-boggling, shocking. And you know, paired with that is this notion, this business plan, this flawed business plan of, we're going to cut your funding to the bone. You go out and find some international students. We'll commodify them. Don't worry about, you know, we talk about international students as though they're a monolith, as though they're not actually students, as though they're not actually people. They're just monetary units. This is the province's business plan. It's mind-boggling.
No, I think that, I mean, just in general, like jumping in about how international students are treated on campus, a whole other issue in its entirety. But like, yeah, no, I think that like, I hate that when I meet students who are, and students and I mean, faculty members and administration who don't treat people who are international the way that they should. And the only thing that I have to say to that is to explain, you know, the money that we get from international students is awful, right? That shouldn't be the only thing that speaks to people. But yeah, that whole other issue in itself, right? But I think that, you know, it is mind-blowing to have a university in Ontario have to apply like be in credit protection, right? Like, you know, a public institution should be protected by the government, right? We would hope that they would step in and take care of this stuff, but like, you know, even in the meeting that we had with the deputy minister, it was a whole lot of no answers and we don't know, right? But yeah, no immediate action, not anything that we would want to see, at least.
Darius, one of the things, I mean, it surprised the hell out of me, and Ruben brought it up, that, you know, the University of Toronto is banking off the side a Laurentian-sized budget or two every year. So that surprised me. Was there anything else that Alex Usher said that surprised you?
Just honestly, the scope of how bad it is. I think that I've been deep in this for a while, so like, you know, and I'm not much of a finance aficionado, right? So like, the more that people kind of, you know, put this into perspective, I really do learn more and more from all of this, and it's really bad. So I think that it is crazy when you consider other universities like, you know, U of T, who are, you know, doing just fine. I think that, you know, it is a lot about how Laurentian was run, right? Like, it almost seemed like, and this is just kind of a firsthand perspective, but it seemed like they were operating in a way that, you know, they thought that they were more than they were, right? Like they were capital investments, kind of, you know, dishing money at any projects that they had kind of wanted. And now we're in this hole where, you know, faculty members, students, Sudbury as a whole is going to get hurt from these consequences, right? Of not being a little more frugal, not having a board of governors who is more transparent, and not having that, you know, that preemptive kind of planning, right? It's as you said, you know, it's crazy that, you know, like the finance department should have known about this, and it's not should have, they did know about this, right? So, you know, to sit on that information for so long is it's insane. Right? Like, I don't know what the original plan was. If somebody wouldn't have said something, like, would we have waited until, you know, we had to, you know, file for bankruptcy? Would it have gone to the point where, you know, we actually started to physically see, you know, campus struggling before somebody actually came forward and said there was a problem?
So I have a kind of a follow-up question, Darius. You're talking a bit about, you know, the response from the province. My question, so I went to Laurentian, I took the same program you did. So, you know, cheers to law and justice. I have my degree on the wall behind me, and I'm quite upset as an alumni, and I'm not in your shoes as a present student or a present professor, and I'm pissed. So what do you feel like, what responsibilities do you feel that perhaps the province should have to you as a student?
To me as a student, that I get to graduate with the degree that I want to graduate with, and that it does get to say Laurentian University on it. I think that, that is the goal for a lot of students, that we get to graduate with the degrees that we want. I think the other thing that I want to see from the province is that we get the education that we were promised and that we paid for, that we don't have to compromise when it comes to what classes we have to take. People did come here because, they wanted that one-on-one experience with professors, and they wanted to learn from some of the professors at this institution, right? So to think that some of those professors might not be there is just awful for the education that we had set up for and that we had expected. And I think the other thing that I would want as a student, right? And I think that this is where a lot of the unions may kind of lack in this area, right? Where they're really looking at the here and now, because it is the people here and now who are going to be the most affected by all of this, and that we should be trying to protect. But this really is, an issue that spans from the people who have gone, the alumni, the retired academics, to students who are there, to faculty members who are there, down to people who we hope will be able to go to Laurentian also, to have that education in the North that's so vital to the North and for Sudbury as a workplace. And I was joking with a friend of mine when all of this stuff happened, right? Because he alumni also, right? And I think the joke I made was, when a job asks you to apply with a diploma from an accredited university, like, I guess technically, like, is a diploma, but is it from an accredited university? Obviously, students would be okay, but it's just, applying to places without, that accredited, yeah. Not that it would make a difference in the slightest for students applying to jobs. I don't want to scare anybody, but yeah, no, it is something that really does impact everybody.
Reputation of the university is very important, right? I mean, it's people aren't going to go to a university that they think isn't going to result in them having success, moving on in other studies, or finding finding a job in their field when the time comes, right?
Yeah, and honestly, and I hate to say it, but we were ranked last in student life before this COVID stuff happened. That doesn't bode well for students, who were already potentially on the fence of leaving to go to an institution where they might be treated a little bit better. So it is, it is really hard. It's really hard to explain to future students the value of going to Laurentian University right now, which is heartbreaking, right? So yeah, no. It is really sad. I'm sorry. No,
honestly, it is. And talking to you and just thinking about it more today, I was, like I said, not in your shoes, but even me still getting emotional. So I did want to pose the same question to you, Ruben. So, from the province and a responsibility stance, do you feel that there's something owed or that you'd expect from them for you and your colleagues in the faculty role?
Faculty are governed by a collective agreement. The Laurentian University Faculty Association, in French it's APUL, and English it's LUFA, is our representative at the bargaining table, and working conditions are actually laid out in our collective agreement. Our collective agreement has been considered the model at the provincial umbrella body. I've been a representative at OCUFA, the Ontario Confederation of University Faculty Associations, and I've heard from many of my colleagues on the board of directors at OCUFA that in fact Laurentian's language is language that they aspire to. We win grievances more easily than we should, because to be blunt, there are a lot of stupid grievances that go forward. We win arbitrations that are ignored. This has been our history over the last, for the last maybe 8 years, for the last 6-8 years, 2 collective agreements maybe. It quite possibly started when Dominic Giroux came into the university as president. Not to name names, but Dominic is an MBA, and his approach was quite different from his predecessor, Judith Woodsworth, who, if memory serves, I think was an English literature professor. There's an approach. And maybe it's not a surprise, but we started becoming a neoliberal university at the admin side, at the management side, with the onset of a president who has a background not a PhD, but an MBA. The irony is that when the MBAs took over, Laurentian University started doing what corporations do, personal projects like capital funding, capital construction, throwing up buildings for students that weren't there. Is we're in trouble. What shall we do? If you read their narrative, they went out and borrowed about $60 million in 2008-9. And that's in the factum or the affidavit, both of which are probably the most important or most informative documents. And they pretty much tell the story in both of these documents that the Board of Governors realized that they were running into financial shortfall, largely because of provincial underfunding, but also because, I'm sorry, but the North is experiencing a drop in population, and that has affected us. Yes, we failed to, when I say we, the administration failed to reach out to international students, and that's a part of the story, but it begins with underfunding and declining enrollments, which all of Northern Ontario is facing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, Ruben. I was at Trent. I see your former, your undergraduate institution, when we got our first MBA president, and it was about 5-6 years after that they needed help from the province. So I don't know what that says about MBAs, but it certainly says something about our university system.
What a strange coincidence that
it is interesting, isn't it? So Alex Usher says what he assumes is going to be somewhere around a 5% cut, and to me that's if things are relatively kind and there isn't a big any more skeletons in the closet, or any more loans that get called back, or any more demand, like this $45 million are supposed to have for a class action, some weird stuff. 5%. What does that mean to the university, and why should the community care about a 5% cut to the university?
Yeah, I don't know where Alex gets 5% from. I'm reading the legal documents that are filed. Anybody can look them up. They're at laurentianu.info. Ernst & Young has uploaded documents and updates it on a regular basis. I believe the university when they tell us that we that they believe rather, we are too big. We have too many programs and too many faculty. I've heard this from, I've heard it from Dominic Giroux. I've heard it from his temporary successor, Pierre Zundel, who also took over as president somewhere around 2017, during our strike in 2017, as a matter of fact. He was president, and from Robert Hachette. All three of, it's as though they're handed the same envelope that American presidents get, only nobody changes the talking points. And the talking points are, and I've heard this from all three, or members, faculty have heard this. You're too big, you have too many faculty, you have too few students, and I want to cut you down to 50 departments or programs. Heard that from Pierre Zundel, who actually compared us. He said Harvard has only 50 programs. Why is it that Laurentian has? So I said, well, one, we have to be all things to all people. We're a regional university. We're a comprehensive university. Two, Harvard is in Boston, which is a city that has what, 36 universities. I mean, that is the business of Boston. But here we are killing off the only publicly funded university in the largest city in Northern Ontario. This is, I think it heralds, it's a marker for some bad news for the rest of Ontario's publicly funded universities, as far as the province is concerned. But it also shows that there's very little time of day for as far as the province is concerned for Northern Ontario. I think it's a real kick in the pants to Northern Ontario. To demand, and you said insane. I'm trying to avoid the word. The gravity of going through an insolvency. Usher, by the way, called it bankruptcy. I kind of wish he had. But the magnitude of this is a large earthquake as far as public institutions should be concerned. If I were a municipality, a hospital, any publicly, public health unit, any publicly funded, provincially funded agency, and we're talking health and education primarily, as well as social services, should be nervous, should be sweating, should be looking at us and breaking out into a sweat, knees shaking, understanding that if the provincial government gets away with this, then the province will be gunning for you next. Now, they won't be gunning for U of T or likely Western or Queens. But every small university, every marginal university, every Trent, every Nipissing, every Algoma, and every Laurentian should be quaking in their boots. This is your future. Every small municipality that's having a hard time meeting their budget, especially during COVID, because apparently, while Northern European countries are getting an influx of money, we have a provincial government that says, no, it's okay. Go through this process that's aimed at companies on the brink of bankruptcy, and you do this and then come to us, right? I mean, the precedent-setting implications of that are monumental. 5%, I don't believe it. I don't think they're going to this trouble. I believe at last count, there were 132 lawyers involved.
Wow.
Laurentian University said that the reason that they didn't use the clause in our collective agreement, the exigency clause. Exigency is a condition, I have to look it up, and it's actually defined in my collective agreement. Defined as substantial and recurring deficits which threaten the long-term solvency of the university as a whole. This is in our collective agreement. It's been signed by both parties. It's been crafted and recrafted and fine-tuned over several collective agreements. Laurentian's administration said it's too complicated and too time-consuming. We don't want to use that clause. They must want something more than 5%. If they plan on they don't just plan on a haircut. They want to gut the patient, I suppose.
I've got one more question for you, Ruben, and then I think Darius, we're going to want to hear from you about the campaign that Save Our Sudbury is undertaking. But I bargain contracts for a living, and you've been involved in the faculty association, Ruben. If you were watching this unfold at another university in the province, how would you approach that as a collective bargaining agent? How would it impact your negotiations if you knew that your board could take your collective agreement, toss it in the collective agreement waste bin beside the president's desk, and start again from scratch? Would it have an impact on your interest in collective bargaining or not?
Collective bargaining is essentially suspended, but it's not. Under the court order, we can't grieve. Our collective agreement is suspended, and yet there's a table at which LUFA is negotiating with a mediator there present. LUFA is negotiating at a table with the admin over our collective agreement. So the collective agreement's being negotiated at one table. LUFA is also representative at restructuring at a separate table. We are told that, and you know, this is the law as I know it, and in fact the case law is named here, Windsor Machine and Stamping, 2009. Justice Morowitz, the same justice that we have, granted an initial order authorizing the debtor company, that's Windsor Machine and Stamping, to terminate the employment of such of its employees as it deems appropriate, subject to any applicable security provisions. 47 employees were terminated. I don't know how big Windsor Machine and Stamping was or is, but I know that the same justice that we're looking at granted them everything they asked for, which was the right to terminate without severance.
They didn't even pay ESA level severance when they did that. They had to meet the minimum under the law. Is that all?
My understanding is, so I've got 16 years, and under the Employment Standards Act, the ESA, I get 1 week per year of service, which is the minimal. This is the basement. This is Walmart legislation. This is legislation that makes sure the lousiest employers in the province, you know, adhere to some sort of decent labor legislation. That is apparently suspended. It's off the table. We don't get that. Not only do we not get severance, that's the 16 weeks is just notice, in lieu of notice, right? Under the Employment Standards Act. You're the negotiator, I'm not. But we also lose the Ontario Labour Relations Board, OLRB. We lose our rights under the OLRB, which is aimed at those workplaces that are organized, that are unionized. We have a collective agreement that's one at the same time suspended, as are our rights as employees in the province of Ontario. And on the other hand, it's being negotiated at a table, you know, with a mediator present. So we have a collective agreement that's dead and alive at the same time. I've been calling it Schrodinger's contract because, you know, it's you don't know if it's dead or alive. You don't want to open that box.
Well, thank you, Ruben. So Darius, I'm going to just ask you a bit of a different question, different topic here for a moment. So of course you're working hard on the campaign that you're trying to mobilize, so Save Our Sudbury. So could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, no, it's a group that is community-based, members from LUFA, students, faculty, people from just, you know, like the clerical union as well, all kind of coming together to try and lobby the municipal and provincial government to try and take action to save our Sudbury. And we, you know, we're really trying to focus on Ross Romano, the Minister of Colleges and Universities, so that, you know, there can be some intervention, so that, you know, we could have the same Laurentian without sacrificing any of the things that make our school so great, any of the great professors, and making so it's, you know, appealable for students to want to go. We don't want, you know, cuts to be made to things that are important in favor of other things that people might think important, right? We need a university that offers, you know, proper mental health services. We need a university that has strong, you know, faculty as well, right? We can't, the goal is to not lose anything, I guess, but to do what we can to have the government step in and to help save Laurentian. Another big part of it is also, you know, advocating for that visibility and that accountability, because, you know, we do recognize that we did get here, and it's not necessarily the fault of the province alone, even though there has been that history of underfunding and lack of funds from the province. There was mismanagement involved also. So we do want that accountability as well. So that's really what the movement is kind of looking like, trying to speak to our city council, trying to talk with the province in order to make sure that we could have a university that's strong up here in the north. So.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you had some luck with your meeting this evening at council. So I'm happy to hear that. And yeah, I think we're going to close out here, but it's been a pleasure to have you both on the show, to meet you, Ruben, Darius, to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate, the community appreciates all the work you guys are doing with Save Our Sudbury and just putting your faces out there. So on behalf of Sudbury Politics, the show, thank you. And we hope to have you back on again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Always fun to be around.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, share your thoughts. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sudbury Politics. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Share with your friends so they can share their thoughts too. We're so glad you joined us, and we hope you tune in again for Sudbury Politics, the show.